Facciamolo un grandissimo applauso ai nostri amici del coro.
Vorremmo continuare a cantare, diciamo la verità, però...
Giuseppe, Giovanni, Gabriele, Marica ed oggi si aggiunge anche Donatella.
Grazie.
Ok, allora siete svegli? Allora noi vi ricordiamo, vi allieteremo in queste 4 giornate, quindi saremo qua a scocciarvi anche con dei giochini. Iniziamo proprio subito per svegliarvi con un giochino semplice. Vi chiedo di alzare.
Non è vero, non è semplice, ci vuole una coordinazione.
No, allora, per tornare un attimo seri, tra poco ci sarà la preghiera. Per pregare bisogna preparare il corpo, no? Bisogna essere con una certa attenzione. Quindi il vostro cervello, che ancora si è appena svegliato, ha fatto colazione, forse ha scelto bene il cornetto giusto, non sa contare fino a 3 e ve ne darò la prova. Ok? Allora quindi vi chiedo di alzarvi tutti.
Sappiamo che è già difficile, ma confidiamo che si riesca a fare. Se avete preso un caffè si riesce.
Vi chiedo di girarvi verso la vostra persona alla destra o alla sinistra, non lo so, l'importante è che fate una coppia, ok? Dovete essere esattamente così. Ok? Le traduzioni sono attive o dobbiamo dare anche le istruzioni in inglese? Ok,
ci fanno
messi a coppia, dovete contare fino a 3 in maniera alternata, quindi sarà così: 1,
2,
3,
1,
2,
3,
1,
2,
3. Vedi
già ci si confonde.
Ok, proviamo. 3, 2, 1, via!
E si inizia a vedere la gente così. Sei tu il 2, sei tu il 3.
Ok.
Senza litigare, Calma.
Ok. Questo era solo il primo livello, Attenzione.
Attenzione, secondo step, perché questo è troppo facile.
Secondo livello, anziché dire il numero 1 si sostituisce con un applauso, quindi non voglio sentire i numeri 1 ma solo un applauso e poi si parte, quindi sarà così:
2,
3, 2, 3, pronti, via!
espressioni confuse.
Ok, dai, ce la state facendo. Alziamo il livello. L'1 abbiamo detto che è un. Adesso sostituiamo il 2. L'applauso vi sveglia col suono, proviamo a svegliare anche il corpo, quindi il 2 sarà un piccolo saltello. Hop. Ok, svegli. Quindi sarà 1, 3, ok? Pronti? Solo il numero 3, via!
Questa è coordinazione pura.
Non è così.
Ok, l'ultimo livello che dobbiamo iniziare con la preghiera, l'ultimo. Questa volta tocca sostituire il 3. Ora, in oratorio il 3 sarebbe lo squat. Però dai 30 in su già lo squat fa fatica, quindi evitiamo lo squat. Mi dicono che chi soffre di pressione fa pure fatica a girare per la giravolta, quindi togliamo pure la giravolta. Facciamo che il numero 3 è Don Bosco, ok? Che mette d'accordo tutti qua dentro. Quindi sarà, anziché 3 diremo Don Bosco, quindi applauso 1, salto 2, poi Don Bosco, ok? Pronti? Partenza, via! Benissimo, facciamoci un applauso!
Bravissimi! Siamo, direi, abbastanza svegli e carichi. Allora ci possiamo sedere, tanto ormai il cervello si è attivato.
È arrivato l'ossigeno?
Che era faticoso stare dietro. Allora, Adesso che quindi siamo connessi in tutti i sensi, siamo connessi di nuovo anche con tutto il mondo salesiano che salutiamo. E allora possiamo dare qualche avviso. Primo di tutto c'è ancora qualcuno che non è passato in segreteria e quindi non è stato registrato e quindi non ha ricevuto il badge, che però oggi in particolare ci servirà per i lavori di gruppo che faremo più tardi. Quindi se qualcuno ancora non è passato a farsi registrare, vicino alla portineria di Valdocco c'è la segreteria e è possibile farlo e ricevere il badge. A proposito di iscrizioni, per le visite guidate a
particular
Valdocco,
language work groups into which they will be divided for the reflection sessions in smaller circles. So they're just taking care of some housekeeping matters.
Nella zona qui del teatro e della portineria sempre, quindi si può scannerizzare il QR code e iscriversi alla visita che preferite.
Credo basta.
Sì, allora oggi ci soffermiamo da Strenna, abbiamo visto ieri che è stata molto ricca, no? Ci ha dato tantissimi spunti, allora noi un pochino la divideremo, no? In due parti. Oggi siamo ancorati alla speranza.
So we pursue our theme today, anchored in hope.
Su questo palco è casuale, quindi siamo vestiti di verde perché anche Stefano è vestito di verde. Ha le strisce verdi, quindi è tutto calcolato.
The color of the day is green, color of hope. And so Bianca is proudly showing her green sweater, and Stefano also has a nice green stripe in his plaid shirt. And so now we're going to move into the morning's prayer session, which will be guided by hope does not disappoint. We begin this day with the sign of the cross, a virtue that sustains us on the path we are experiencing as the Salesian family. In this time of Jubilee, called by Pope Francis, we are invited to renew our creative fidelity to Christ, certain that we are always under the gaze of God's love. Hope is not a mere wish. It is the certainty that the Lord walks with us, especially in times of trial. As Don Bosco reminds us, hope is nourished by faith and charity, urging us to be concrete signs of God's love for young people, especially the poorest and the loneliest. In fraternal communion, let us open our hearts to pray and let hope transform us.
In comunione fraterna, apriamo il nostro cuore alla preghiera e lasciamo che la speranza ci trasformi. Nel nome del Padre, del
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us listen now to the Word of God that speaks to our hearts. From the Acts of the Apostles. The community of believers was of one heart and mind, and no one claimed that any of his possessions was his own, but they held everything in common. With great power, the apostles bore witness to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great favor was accorded to them all. There was no needy person among them, for those who owned property or houses would sell them, bring the proceeds of the sale, and put them at the feet of the apostles, and they were distributed to each according to the need.
Portavano il ricavato di ciò che era stato venduto e lo deponevano ai piedi degli apostoli. Poi veniva distribuito a ciascuno secondo il suo bisogno.
Today's world lacks the capacity to cry. Yet the marginalized weep, the discarded weep, those who are despised weep. But those who lead more or less comfortable lives do not know how to weep. Let us learn how to weep. Jesus wept in the gospel. He wept for his dear friend, for the family who had just lost their daughter, for the widowed mother who was taking care of her son until he passed, and she was speaking with him, taking him to the cemetery. He wept in his heart when he saw the crowd like sheep without a shepherd. If we do not learn to weep, we are not good Christians. We need not be afraid to weep. Jesus never abandons us. He is our hope. Do I know how to weep? Do I know how to entrust the frailties of my personal life to God? Do I know how to be moved by the needs and pain of others? What conversion am I called to allow my heart to be renewed?
Recitiamo insieme il Salmo 62. Ognuno lo troverà un versetto scritto nella propria lingua e quando è la propria lingua lo leggiamo, lasciamo poi che gli altri recitino nell'altra lingua. O Dio, tu sei il mio Dio,
All'aurora ti cerco, di te ha sete l'anima mia.
O Lord, you are my God. At dawn I search for you. My soul is thirsting for you. For you, my body is hungry like a desert seeking water. If I contemplate you in the sanctuary, Lord, there I see your glory, because your love is worth more than life. Your lips speak of hope. I will praise you my whole life. To you I will raise my hands. My soul shall praise you and give you glory. With my lips I will sing your praises.
Di segni di speranza hanno bisogno anche coloro che in se stessi la rappresentano, i giovani. Essi purtroppo vedono spesso crollare i loro sogni. Come famiglia salesiana non possiamo deluderli.
We all need signs of hope,
Entusiasmo si fonda la
even those who trust in themselves, the young. They, however,
realizzare i loro sogni.
often see their dreams come to nothing. As a Salesian family, we must not disappoint them. We must build a future on their enthusiasm. It's wonderful to see the exuberance of their youthful energies, dedicated to the realization of their dreams, especially when they commit themselves to good works in situations of social difficulties. For this reason, the Jubilee is for the Church and for the Salesian family an occasion to start out again with renewed energy towards the young who are always ready to serve. With renewed passion, we need to incarnate the Damichi Animas, committing ourselves to take care of the young, boys and girls, especially those who are most abandoned and wounded by life. Closeness to the young, joy and hope within the Church, joy and hope for the Salesian family and for the world.
Rispondiamo alle intercessioni con il canto Nada te turbe. Nada te turbe, nada te spante, che na Dios tiene, nada ne falta, nada te turbe, nada te spante, solo Dios basta.
Seigneur, nous te confions les jeunes qui vivent isolés, sans affection ni soutien.
Lord, we entrust to you young people who live in isolation, lacking affection or support. Give them hope, the strength to rise up, and the chance to meet welcoming hearts and communities that know how to give them love and honor their dignity. We pray. Lord of peace, look with mercy upon the young people who suffer in war-torn places. Protect them from violence, give them hope for a better future, and inspire in the hearts of the powerful the sincere desire to build peace. Let us pray. Lord, we entrust to you young people scarred by violence, physical or psychological. Console them in their suffering, heal their wounds, and give them the hope and strength to rediscover trust in others and in you. Let us pray.
Lord, guide and enlighten the path of all the youth of the world. Grant that they may realize their dreams, contribute to the common good, and become instruments of hope and solidarity in their communities. Let us pray.
Nadate turbe, nadate spante, chiena Dios tiene, nada le falta, nadate turbe, nadate spante, solo Dios basta.
As we prepare to conclude this moment of prayer, I invite you to hold hands and pray the Lord's Prayer together, each in your own language, as a sign of unity and fraternity. This prayer, taught to us by Jesus, is a hymn of trust and hope, reminding us that we are all children of the same Father and that His love embraces the whole world.
Ciascuno nella sua lingua.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Se dovrai attraversare il deserto, non temere, io sarò con te. Se dovrai camminare nel fuoco, la sua fiamma non brucerà.
If I should cross the barren desert, no fear shall I have, because you are with me. If I have to walk through fire, the burning flames will not harm me. I will follow your light through the night. I will feel your force, so your strength sustain me on my journey. I know that you are there, my Lord and my God.
Sono io che ti ho fatto e trattato, ti ho chiamato.
It is I who have made you and shaped you. I have called you by name. From all eternity I have known you, and I have given you my love. Because you are precious to my eyes, you are worth more than precious treasure. I will be with you wherever you go.
Io sarò con te, dovunque andrai. L'aria oltre di te,
Do not worry about the things of yesterday. New things will blossom today. I will open fresh paths through the desert. I will send water to call forth new life. Because you are precious to my eyes, you are worth more than precious treasure. I will be with you wherever you go. I will be always beside you. For the entire journey of your life, I will be with you. I will be there beside you every day and every step of your journey of life.
Wow. Ora è sempre bruttissimo iniziare, cioè, come fai a iniziare?
After such a beautiful prayer moment, it's kind of hard to come back into the order of business and proceed with the program for the day. But it's wonderful to have these moments where heaven comes down and touches earth. And so let's just at this point have a little recap of yesterday's events. We see on the stage the ship that was part of the presentation by the young kids from the school here in Valdocco, reminding us and bringing to life the first missionary expedition in 1875 to Patagonia. And so these rafts, these boats are a symbol of what we are living, a symbol of hope. Each flag attached to the raft is dedicated to a group of the Salesian family. And so 32 flags, one for each of the member groups of the Salesian family. Every group anchored to hope, anchored to Christ in the spirit of St. John Bosco. Yes, that's true, but there's something else. Thanks to our friends at Email Communications, the digital company responsible for all the transmission of this, there are people running around making sure everything is on point, connections made, and so we want to express our gratitude to them. Thank you to Email Communications, who takes care of the audio-visual for these days. They've produced a little video of yesterday's events, so let's take a look and recap the main highlights.
Buongiorno, un grande saluto a tutti quelli che siete arrivati a questa 43esima edizione delle giornate di spiritualità della famiglia salesiana. Siamo una famiglia in cammino, ci vogliamo unire al cammino della Chiesa in questo anno giubilare dalla mano del motto della nostra Strenna, ancorati in Cristo, pellegrini con i giovani. Buon cammino!
Sono Salvo Di Maio, è la terza volta che partecipo alle giornate di spiritualità della famiglia salesiana e ogni volta si torna sempre con grande entusiasmo perché uno cerca di portare a casa un po' il profumo di Don Bosco.
Per me è la terza volta che vengo, è sempre un piacere perché ritrovare la Basilica Maria Ausiliatrice e i nostri santi mi rinnova spiritualmente.
Bonjour, moi c'est Karine Songuet, je viens de la RTC, je suis salésienne coopératrice. Je suis très heureuse et très contente de participer aux journées de spiritualité de la famille salésienne à Turin. Je salue tout le monde et je vous aime bien comme Don Bosco. Caribou à tout le monde. Ancré dans l'espérance.
La famille salésienne se retrouve dans la
Anchored in hope. It's good to be here with so many members of the Salesian family. And so, greeting to all my friends back home. I come from Barcelona, from the Salesian community of St. John Bosco in Barcelona. It's my first time that I come to Valdocco. And so, this chance to meet and experience this adventure, let it come on. Let's go. My name is Lina. I come from Syria. I'm here for these moments of Salesian spirituality, an occasion for joy with the Salesian family.
Siete nel nostro cuore, ma siete nel cuore di Don Bosco e ancora più nel cuore di Dio. Grazie, grazie, grazie a voi. Sono onorato di introdurre queste giornate. Carissime e carissimi componenti della famiglia salesiana, è per me un grande onore tornare a darvi il benvenuto qui a Valdocco, nella casa di Don Bosco.
Allora, grazie Bianca, grazie Stefano. Una genovese che dice a un torinese che dobbiamo andare a fondo, bisogna spiegarsi un attimino perché andiamo a fondo, ma poi abbiamo perso tutto. Ecco. Volentieri faccio questa cosa perché questa idea splendida di Don Bosco, che è la Strenna, è una cosa geniale. Vi porto i saluti di Angel Fernandez Archime. Guardiamo il video e poi ne parliamo un attimo.
എന്നാൽ ഈ പ്രതീക്ഷ എന്താണ്?
شهيد الأمل.
Però quale è questa speranza? Dove trovo la forza?
What can I cling to?
Chi vedi? Come faccio ad andare avanti? എങ്ങനെ മുന്നോട്ട് പോകാനാണ്?
وين بدي لاقي مساعدة؟
إذا هذا مش حواليا.
La speranza è vedere ciò che non c'è ancora. Bisogna avere appunto l'umiltà di sapere accettare anche le sconfitte e ripartire con nuovo vigore.
Per me la speranza significa avere un senso.
È seguire un cammino, camminare, andare avanti.
É acreditar em Cristo, porque Cristo é a nossa esperança. Cristo verdadeiramente vive e Ele ressuscitou. Então essa é a alegria, esse é o nosso motivo de ter esperança. A vida em Cristo, a vida em Jesus.
Hope is Jesus and strength.
È l'abbandono nelle braccia di Dio Padre.
È credere che Gesù può tutto.
E con questa bellissima immagine.
And so, with this wonderful image of the Basilica at night, we want to come into the beginning of this brand new day. And so we call to the stage Father Juan Luis and Sister Leslie, and they will take us through today's program Let's give them a nice round of applause. Thank you. In this moment, we're gonna go deep, as they say in Genoa.
Andiamo a fondo. Già quasi sono al fondo io.
So if you take your booklets on page 13, you'll find the introduction to this morning's events. And so it's very clear we are in a process. We're on a journey, on a pilgrimage. Who is a pilgrim? A pilgrim is someone who sees many things along the way, but looks more deeply, searching for the essential. For the pilgrim, the important thing is not knowledge, but the understanding of being immersed in mystery. The pilgrimage of these days guides us today to penetrate more and more the mystery of life and to enter into one of its more powerful active ingredients, that is hope. This hope that supports us with the symbol of the anchor and of the journey. And so here are our suggestions for today. First of all, to listen attentively to the presentation by Dr. Cristiana Freni, who will permit us then to have material for our sharing between ourselves. She's coming to us via digital communication with Rome. After her talk, we'll be able to work in small groups to deepen our reflections. Second moment, we will be walking together through the streets of this great city of Turin, allowing ourselves to enter the places where hope touched the heart of so many Christian leaders here, Don Bosco among them, but also the other great social saints of Turin. That is the main event of this afternoon. After that pilgrimage, which will finish at the cathedral, we will celebrate Mass right there at the church, Mother Church of Turin, presided by Turin's auxiliary bishop, Alessandro Giraudo. Finally, in the end of the evening, our evening prayer in Basilica, Encanto with Jesus. This will be guided by Father Maurizio Palazzo and the Young People's Choir from the Basilica here in Valdocco. And so these are four rich possibilities to allow us to enlighten our journey, to take us deeper in our reflection on the gift that is hope, this hope that never disappoints, so that we may be meaningful companions with the young on their journey. And so, with our hearts full, this morning in our prayer, they gave us really a theme for this day, the refrain for the day. Do you remember what it was from the prayer this morning? Nada ti turbe, let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. And so, even if, yes, this will be a long day, don't worry. Everything will be when. We will do this well. There we are. Okay, thank God the novices are up front, rooting for the team. Novices, male and female. The postulants are also here for the sisters. So, let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. Let us plunge into this day. It will be beautiful. It'll be rich. And let's look for the gifts of grace that the Lord wants to place in our hearts as we commit ourselves to continue journeying in hope, especially with the young. It's only in journeying that we discover more what it means to have hope in our hearts, to be men and women of hope. Let's do this. Before handing the mic back to our presenter, Dr. Cristiana Freni, coming to us from Rome, from the Salesian Pontifical University in Rome. There she is on the screen. We can see her, but we can't hear her, and now we can. The wonders of technology. And so I'm very happy to be with. She has just jumped right in. She has jumped right in. Boy, she did not waste any time launching into this presentation. Okay, a round of applause for our very zealous Cristina Freni. And so a little presentation of who our speaker is. Cristina was born in Rome with a degree in letters, classical literature, and philosophy from the University of the Sapienza. Has a master's degree from the Salesian University, the OOPS, in philosophy. Her academic experience is long and rich. I'll just name some of the essentials. Assistant with the Cathedra of Italian Literature and the Faculty of Arts and Philosophy at the Sapienza. Professor of Philosophy of Language, Aesthetics, Modern Language, and Contemporary Literature at the Pontifical University, the Salesian Pontifical University, from which she's speaking today. She's also a professor of anthropology, of empirical anthropology and philosophical anthropology at the Alfonsiana University. She also works at the Lateran University, professor of philosophical anthropology, and the International School of Medicine. And so a rich academic pedigree, many publications and conferences. But what I find in Cristina especially is the rich heart of a deep Salesian in love with humanity, who is always searching with others to share the motivation for her hope that comes from the mercy of God, which she conveys through her writings, through her conferences, and as a keynote speaker at many conferences. And so, my dear Cristiana, we're so happy to have you with us. We listen to you with open hearts. And to those of you in the audience, if any questions emerge as you listen to Cristiana, write them down, and we'll have a chance to have some Q&A after her conference. Okay, Cristiana, whenever you're ready, please, we are ready to listen. Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure for me to be part of your event, and with great appreciation, I'm here. A lot of respect for what's going on there in Valdocco in these days. Okay, now they've cut off our feed, so I'm lip reading. Actually, her text, you can find it in your little booklets on page 3. If you want to read along, I will be reading from that text. Page 3 of the little booklet called Relations. The Jubilee that Pope Francis inaugurated on December 24th with the opening of the Holy Door in Rome places one of the most deeply rooted and urgent themes of human reality, which is that of hope. places hope at the center of existential and spiritual reflection. Hope is a word that we use often, maybe even we use it and we abuse it, given the frequency with which it is used and repeated. And precisely for this reason, in our time of quiet planetary despair, it requires some serious rethinking and repositioning of meaning to be rediscovered and appreciated. The theme of hope has been part of the context of human culture and wisdom since ancient times. In the tradition of antiquity, hope was known to be the last good goddess. According to the Latin proverb, spe ultima dea est, the assertion arose from an imprudent act in line with the myth of the jar in which Zeus had stored numerous dreadful things for mankind, including plagues, wars, and Pandora, who thoughtlessly opened it but managed to close it just in time to prevent the release of the final gift, hope, after all the preceding evils had been unleashed. In English, we know it as Pandora's box. An intriguing observation arises. To comprehend why hope, even in ancient myths, remains watchful, prepared to step in and become part of history, to alleviate the despair of life, to provide healing for the troubles that only hope can take away, sealed away in a jar and protected, could still remedy. Evils that only hope, remaining closed in the jar and guarded, could still heal. So, already in pagan tradition, hope seems to be necessary because there is still time to intervene to heal the wounds of humanity where evil seems to have won its victory. More than ever before in the successive epochs of human history, the various approaches that have dealt with hope from different sides have reactualized and relaunched its necessity, its urgency, its relevance, since every age has been marked by a sense of limitation, contingency, by the very challenge of falling into despair. The term hope has ancient etymological origins, which take us back to Sanskrit. The meaning of this root is linked to the movement of existence that surpasses the boundary defining human existence, moving beyond individual circumstances. Hope, in short, means being turned towards something that transcends us, that surpasses us, that lies beyond ourselves. Hope appears as both a fundamental and foundational dimension which has taken on different facets over the centuries, enriching itself with meaning and connotations depending on cultural epochs and historical contexts. From an anthropological perspective, hope can be considered first and foremost as one of the dimensions of being that structure the human person. Therefore, this allows us, and at the same time, obliges us not to just consider it as a virtue referring to the sphere of ethics and theology, as it is most usually interpreted.
Allora proprio in quel momento la speranza torna a diventare necessaria, torna a diventare indispensabile.
In fact,
È bello vedere la storia, come dico spesso ai miei allievi, delle parole, perché nella storia delle parole si nascondono
in the history of words, their etymology, we discover some of the mystery that we need to rediscover. The word hope has very ancient roots, which take us back to Sanskrit. The meaning of this root is linked to the movement of existence.
significa muoversi verso qualcosa che incide.
Hope in its roots means to move towards something that is greater than me, moving something that is greater than me, beyond my own capabilities and limits. And so when we speak about hope, we're talking already of something that transcends us, that draws us beyond and above ourselves, to go beyond and higher than what we could achieve on ourselves. Hope, therefore, from an anthropological point of view, presents a dimension of who we are as people, fundamental to our humanity, which over the centuries has been emphasized in different ways, stressed in different capacities, but definitely today, in light of so many experiences, not just philosophical studies, not only of scientific studies, but parting from our human experiences, we can say that hope is part of our human structure. And for this reason, to hope comes natural to us. Hoping is part of our physiological way of being. Just like we're able to speak, we're able to know, we're able to choose, to love, we're also able to hope. And so, first of all, before even turning hope into something as a virtue, a theological virtue, which it is, but before we get there, we can reflect on the fact that we can exercise a virtue only if we are able humanly to do so. And so, yes, humanly speaking, as human beings, men and women, we are able to hope. And so hope manifests itself as an attitude that is that constitutes who we are. An attitude that's part of us, focused on a search for direction, for meaning in life. A motor, if you want, that drives us, makes us act, that propulses us into change. And so hope has everything to do with our being, not with something that we have, but with who we are. Hope makes us human because it habilitates us to grow. From a human perspective, it qualifies us not because we have more, but because we are able to retain values. We're able to find meaning in life because we have possibilities for eternity and for even joy. And so, Father Palombieri, a great Salesian professor, Salvino Palombieri, one of the greatest Salesian anthropologists of recent decades, a respected and deep scholar in the dimension of hope in the last several years, who has been in dialogue with the secular world, has deepened the dimension of hope in the human experience. Without hope, the human experience would lose its perspective on eternity. It would deprive life of its deepest meaning. We would lose the scope, the goal of the human journey, of the journey of life. And so hope brings us home. Hope has a destination and provides us a way of being there. Without hope, we've lost our rudder. We get tossed about. We have no sense of certainty of where we need to go. We lose our direction. The meaning of the direction of life is rooted in hope. It's not by chance. In Italian, we say senso, means two things. Senso, it can mean direction, and it could also mean the meaning. And so to know where to go gives meaning to who we are. And so it seems evident that hope must first of all be lived and experienced deeply as a fact of our awareness and humanity, since life is based on the certainty that our personal history and that human history, more generally, will not be in vain, will not be destined to despair or to annihilation. Hope sustains us personally and sustains humanity collectively, notwithstanding the difficulties we face. Hope sustains us and accompanies us towards fulfillment, despite the evils, the defeats, the many battles of everyday life.
le tante battaglie che ogni giorno ciascuno di noi affronta.
This constant reaching beyond ourselves, notwithstanding the many difficulties that make up life, this constant reaching beyond ourselves, which allows us to relaunch, to start again, to yearn, to move beyond the challenges and limits, this is the deep core of what we call hope.
Superando le sfide del limite dell'esistenza è proprio il nucleo profondo di ciò che noi, da un punto di vista umano, chiamiamo la speranza.
La speranza allora ci
Hope, therefore,
pellegrini.
makes us pilgrims.
Non è un caso che questa parola
It's not by coincidence that the image of the pilgrim on a pilgrimage is so dear to the Holy Father, especially in this Jubilee year focused on hope. We are pilgrims of hope. Life is a journey, but in order to do this journey well, it's necessary that human beings, men and women on the way, viandanti, the homo viator, the human being on the way, invests himself or herself, builds who they are based on a project of life to which he or she is faithful, becoming authentically who they propose to be. Hope does not mean take away the difficulties. Hope means knowing how to navigate them, how to enter the tension of difficulties with a way of managing them to get beyond. This is a great challenge. Thanks to hope, the manifold possibilities of the homo viator, the man on a journey to construct himself, is the investment of a project in the revival amidst manifold difficulties. Take on meaning and direction. Ours is a world that continually threatens hope, a world that either surrenders to a certain quiet and inexorable despair, or indulges in an easy, cheap optimism that is as quick to cultivate as it is to be extinguished when, for example, an emergency happens or events fail to meet expectations. Certainly, however, hope, being part of the human existential condition, as Palombieri states, is radically linked to the experience of the fragility of the existential condition that each person carries within them. So, what does it mean to hope? And how do we hope? And in whom do we hope? Hope is therefore is not an accidental aspect of the person, but it is part of his or her very substance. It governs and guides the human being's path from the beginning of their life, and for this reason appears as the indispensable bread that the pilgrim places in their knapsack to face their journey and to strengthen them for that journey until they arrive at the destination. The metaphor of life as a pilgrimage, which the Jubilee itself urges us to meditate on and embody, has three elements which can be distinguished. Accept the cost of the journey, the certainty of the goal, the encounter and listening to those who share the journey with us. Accept the journey, the certainty of the goal, and the encounter with those with whom we will share the journey. A pilgrimage is not so much a vacation, and so it's going to cost us. We had to be prepared to suffer or pay something, the first point. Leaving is the easy part. The goal is the objective. We need to have a sense of where we are going, the second part. And along the way, we encounter the third part, the people who will journey with us, listening to their story, sharing ours with them, and in the sharing, being enriched and strengthened to continue the journey. Anyone then who sets out on a pilgrimage does so in the form of an offering and an awareness of their own fatigue, takes into account the roughness and possible detours of the journey, but is inwardly sure that the journey precisely is a pilgrimage which has a destination, not some disembodied or disordered or pointless wandering around. The destination draws us forward.
disordinato, ma è un tendere verso un approdo. Sperare allora
Hope,
significa
therefore, means moving with certainty along the road, knowing that the road leads home, and the human being needs a home. We need to know that there's a home that waits for me.
la sua strada non è
We need to know that our journeying is not mindless. There's a destination, there's a finality, there's a point of arrival. And so hope requires the sense of a meaningful destination. Hope indicates what the destination is, this outcome, and habilitates the traveler to reach the destination.
ed è proprio quel presagio
Translated into practical terms, therefore, hope demands a safe landing, indicates such, and anticipates such, because it has certainly foreshadowed it. In the passage of Revelation, it is Christ himself who is the symbol of hope, reoffered and relaunched, becoming an indivisible part of the dynamics of hope. Without Christ, the Strenna states to us, anchoring in a safe place is lacking. We remain at the mercy of the waves, of the tides that risk our life, foundering in material things, in confusion about true values, in all kinds of things, in short, that do not seem to have a deep place, unable to anchor us securely. Only Christ can do that.
riguardo a quello che è davvero necessario portare nel nostro viaggio. Allora la speranza
Hope, therefore,
è qualcosa
does not
che ci
appear as a private,
che ci
individualistic datum in human experience.
la cosa importante,
No,
la
it is
cosa
something bigger. It indicates something very important.
importantissimo. Quando noi speriamo,
When we hope,
non speriamo
we never hope exclusively alone, individually. Hope, by its nature in Christianity, never lives as a private datum of fact or an individualistic thing. Hope means invoking a community, the principle of community, because the horizon of human fulfillment is not devoid of the relational dimension. We cannot save ourselves alone. The meaning of our individual life derives from our belonging and our participation in a broader community.
senza la relazione con il tu, senza il riconoscimento
Life has no meaning without a reciprocity that sustains hope itself. And so hoping means moving together towards a common goal. Since Christianity is not exclusive, it does not eliminate or keep others out. Christianity is based on inclusiveness. Therefore, one does not hope only for oneself, closed in on one's individualistic horizon, according to the criterion of a private or functional approach. Hope is hope to the extent that it draws us into an exchange with others, so that the person beside me physically becomes also part of my hope, inasmuch as they can sustain me to keep going. And so we don't just hope for ourselves in our little individual bubble.
secondo il criterio del privato,
Hope is not a private thing, hoping for what I think is good for me. Hope is a collective dynamic for the community and with the community. Hope, therefore, the true hope that does not disappoint, that does not confuse, is not for an elite or for the few, but for all those who are capable of hope, that is, every human being. We are made, designed in our DNA to have hope. And so, hope is not a possession or a good for the privileged few, but concerns and questions everyone in the meaning of our life, our past, our present, our future, and can therefore be exercised by every human being.
singolarmente certo, ma umanamente in tutta la nostra umanità e può essere perciò esercitata, fruita, goduta la speranza da ciascun essere umano.
And so, this inclusive horizon also makes hope something to be shared through encounter. This is so important. This is extraordinary because of the possibility that open up when we let hope bring us into communion. And that is maybe one of the richest opportunities of this Jubilee year and these spirituality days. During a pilgrimage, we aim towards the absolute, our deepest goals, finding ourselves next to different companions along the way. This makes the journey of hope an opportunity to experience community. At the same time, every community is based on the ability to listen to the other in their irreducible identity, to take on their story, to bear witness to them that hope is not just a given, but something, a task to be built and strengthened together. Welcome and acceptance pass through the stages of recognition and listening. And hope becomes dynamic in history when we practice it in humanitarian works, without reserve, without being utilitarian or functional about it. And so the power of welcoming, the power of recognizing, especially those who are often invisible and unnoticed, to give credence to the despair of someone who has lost hope, to allow them to rediscover their capacity for hope. And this is why works of humanity are so important. Concrete signs of the desire and the ability to build a human world that is more respectful of every person in it. Hope is born with the other, for the other, and draws us out of the tendency to be selfish and self-centered and exploitative. And so hope has this quality to it as well. Hope, in fact, is a free offering to anyone in need of recognition. Someone who has to be noticed, accepted for who they are, for where they've been, for what they've done, accepted even with the fragility of their humanity. A free offering that costs us nothing monetarily, but has precious value. Hope is thus a dimension of the human being because, as we have pointed out, it embodies our capacity to project ourselves beyond our contingent being, our limited reality in history, and to overcome the challenges, the obstacles that personal and collective history present. Nevertheless, hope, when practiced within the flow of human existence, triggers an energy in individuals that surpasses the notion of their own contingency in time, in ability, and seemingly insurmountable boundaries.
E a rischio di tante confusioni, lo dicevamo all'inizio. Una delle maggiori confusioni che da un punto di vista,
Now, hope, unfortunately, can also often be misunderstood and misrepresented. And we can confuse hope with many other things. For example, hope is not optimism, and this creates this confusion. Hope is not optimism. In Italy, it was very popular for a while during the COVID. Everything will be fine. Everything will go fine. It was a slogan here in the press in Italy during COVID, like a mantra. It was used many times. Everything's going to be fine. And that was not true. The data proved that everything did not go well. A lot of people died. A lot of people suffered. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of dramatic influences happened psychologically from COVID that came from the implosion of our relationships that were truncated in an unexpected way because of the isolation imposed by COVID. And we still have to deal with the consequences. And so, in truth, we know that the, we know that optimism, history actually overturned the kind of wishful thinking, the optimism that was conveyed by that slogan, everything will be fine, revealing its groundlessness. Optimism is activated on a different level from that of hope, which is part of our structure of being. Hope is located above all within the psychological zone of the person. Being optimistic does not mean being hopeful. Hope does not arise from a disembodied foundation, from positive thinking, but from a leaning towards fullness that finds legitimacy and foundation in transcendence. So optimism is a good thing. It has its usefulness, but it's limited. But optimism does not have the foundation in something transcendental that is bigger and more enduring than us. That's why optimism will disappoint, whereas hope never will. Optimism operates on a separate plane, primarily focusing on the psychological aspect. Those who are optimistic often have to deal with disappointment, which is the lack of a goal. Optimism has no basis in someone beyond ourselves and will not be a harbinger with certainty of safety and landfall. Hope and optimism may appear related, but at the same time, they also present important differences in their meaning and manifestation with respect to the individual's inner experience. In fact, we have seen how hope appears to be an innately constitutive dimension of the human being, which manifests itself as a projection towards the future, whether understood within the horizon of our existence or launched towards transcendence, the transcendental. Hope inhabits us because it is necessary in our journey towards self fulfillment. When faced with challenges or uncertainties, when we can trust and believe in the possibility of a salvific landing, arriving at a safe place, despite the omnipresent challenge of evil, hope does its extraordinary work. It is an incredibly strong, tenacious inner strength that supports us in persevering even in the most difficult circumstances. Hope guides us in facing even the most challenging goal, that of death, without losing faith in authentic life, which in its highest form coincides with the aspiration of the eternity of being. In summary, hope does not disappoint, according to the well-known line.
L'approdo a cui l'ottimismo non sempre arriva e non è un approdo poi diremmo ultimo, è un approdo, è magari di un traguardo parziale. Allora, la speranza fa ancora qualcosa di più. La speranza fa ancora qualcosa di più perché? Perché la speranza ci dà risposta, ci dà un valore di atteggiamento di fronte alla esperienza, diremmo, più estrema. Il traguardo sicurissimo, che non possiamo evitare, che è anche il più tragico, perché sembra essere il punto di non ritorno della vita umana, ed è la morte. La morte oggi è una parola di cui non dobbiamo parlare. Mi sono occupata molto della morte nella mia vita di studiosa, ma anche così come volontaria di assistenza agli hospice. Ho accompagnato tante persone, tanti morenti, all'ultimo portale. E certamente la morte è qualcosa che oggi disturba, che è impossibile quasi da pronunciare, una sorta di tabù. Come tante parole sono abusate, ci sono anche tante parole smarrite, tante parole che non si trovano più nel vocabolario quotidiano. Allora, ecco, la morte può essere, per chi non è credente, per chi non ha speranza, il punto del non ritorno del nostro essere, l'ultima pagina della nostra vita. Se noi guardiamo al nostro tempo, che è un tempo anche appunto disperato, un tempo di nichilismo, un tempo di riduzionismo antropologico, perché poi in molti ambiti in cui lavoro mi capita spesso di sentire che l'uomo è un essere biodegradabile. Basta.
Many will see human beings as just the biodegradable animal that eats and sleeps for a few years and then disintegrates. That's the optic for someone without hope. But is it possible? Is it possible that a human being be only a biodegradable animal that will disappear? That death will have the last word of our history, of our story, of our life? Well, yes. I mean, yes, we do have to die. But what then?
Operative, a volte si vincono, a volte si perdono. Ma certamente
We don't stop there. Yes, there is war. After so many battles, the war ends.
dato evidente la morte per tutti gli uomini, nonostante le sfide del transumano che ci sono davanti, tutti gli uomini, tutte le donne, tutti gli esseri umani non possono evitare, non possono rimandare da se stessi, da loro stessi, questo traguardo, questo punto di arrivo.
Let's refocus.
Quindi siamo esseri
We are fragile human beings, dependent on so many things, vulnerable. And it's obvious that we are beings who are mortal. We will die. But this is the rub here. Being human is not made for death. God did not make us for death. Man was created for fullness of life. So death is a passage, a necessary passage, not easy to accept, to be sure, to face death.
Ma vedete, la morte presuppone, se fosse davvero l'ultimo passaggio della nostra vita, un fatto terribile da un punto di vista antropologico, e cioè la perdita del nostro essere. Avrebbe allora ragione tanta letteratura antropologica nichilista.
Is nihilistic, based on a vision of man as really nothing, because the fate, the human being would suffer the worst fate because we're mindful of of who we are. We experience fear and anxiety before death, and we can do nothing about it. And so we better be an animal rather than a human being, because they die, but they don't have a sense that death is coming. And so that's not the way we go as Christians. We have to distinguish the nihilistic view of man, which is not the Christian view. Death and hope go together. Death and hope are deeply linked. This is because death is the most tragic goal and apparently the point of no return from human life. But we see that hope supports the earthly pilgrimage, helping and encouraging the traveler to resume the journey, to trust in the voyage, but also to reach the final destination, fullness of life, beyond death. This highlights how hope is not only a viaticum for the day to day, for overcoming the challenges and circumstances of life, but also becomes for the human being a drive for the beyond of time itself. Hope is therefore necessary both to face the challenge of life in time and for that which concerns what is beyond time, for which death is the passageway. Here we come face to face with the supreme mystery of the existential journey of the individual, our final destination. To understand this extraordinary dynamism projected beyond life, in relation to which life itself takes on a further meaning and a more permanent point of arrival, hope then requires a conscious return to the evident fact, even in today's culture, of what death is. To consciously live the time which our life gives us, we need to responsibly assume the inescapable meaning of death. Seen this way, hope, in its deepest specificity, goes beyond the human concept of time. Our life is full of limits, because before which the human being reacts by trying to overcome them. These are continuous, ongoing battles, and although we may triumph in all the challenges that life throws our way, in the end, death has the final say, appearing to consistently prevail in the ultimate conflict. It is here that hope is then inserted as the essential horizon of meaning for human life. Without a reasonable hope that our life is not meant to come to an end, but rather to reach fulfillment and fullness, our life would take on a sense of contingency, uncertainty, biodegradable material, and that's all. There's no meaning in that. Human beings were not created to accept the loss of their own being, but to achieve perfect self-preservation and to attain the perfect fulfillment of their aspirations, life eternal. We can say that there is a big difference between desire and longing in our inner experience. Desire is structured like the end goal of the will towards the achievement of a good to be obtained, but it remains merely anchored to the contingent, to circumstances, often beyond our control. Conversely, longing concerns what is beyond the limits of historicity and moves in the direction of fulfillment beyond death. Human beings long for what gives them fullness, not in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality and perfection. We hope in the eternal life which we yearn for, because if there were no eternal life, all life would have been in vain and based on an accumulation of goods, the quantity of material acquisitions that would not offer any solution or consolation when death hits. Father Sabino Palumbieri again points out that the experience of the human existential limit finds its highest and most arduous challenge in the supreme tragic nature of the event of death. In the history of philosophical thought, the theme of death used to be framed in terms of what lies beyond death. The question was basically, what is there after death? And how does man live and his soul separated from his body? Today, with the decline of any serious thinking on the expansion of a weaker thinking, with the collapse of values to the tune of this question, what value do values have? The most urgent problem that arises is the question of meaning. And applying this to our theme, we can ask, what is the meaning of life if its ultimate destination is devoid of meaning? If death is the final word, and human beings cannot derive its meaning either from their lives or from the totality of the universe and history, where can they derive meaning from? And so, within this framework, what value does my inestimable tension of being have in relation to the universal reign of death? If its death is not the last word, if there is a meaning of life linked to personal immortality, what is it? And does this radically exist? How should it be interpreted? What is the basis of its subsistence? And so, as can be deduced from these reflections, the fundamental questions of the depth of the heart lie in the depths of our humanity. In the transition from the analysis of the structure of the human being to spiritual and religious reflection, hope appears, as is known, as one of the theological virtues which grounds the believer's trust in divine promise, placing it in the eschatological horizon of their existence.
Sicuramente qualcuno di voi lo ha sentito, ma qui non certo facciamo lezioni di
We draw some reflections now on hope from the French theologian Gabriel Marcel. And Gabriel Marcel describes hope as a fundamental fact for human being. Existence is characterized by a sense of mystery and incompleteness, the distinctive icon of which is the famous Marcellian image of the anthropology of the Homo Viator, a pilgrim on the path of his history in the guise of a wayfarer, aware of a point of arrival, the road that leads to the destination. It is in this space of existence, as a metaphor for a journey permanently being realized, that Marcel refers to the famous image of the metaphorical space of man's depth as invocation. We can intuit what lies beyond. We yearn to reach it, but Marcel's vision offers it as something that is already perceptible to us, one that perceives how the calling into question or the interrogation of oneself changes at the extreme into a summons, which is in fact the unique act of religious consciousness, and which happens can never be converted, but fictitious, can never be converted into an affirmation or a statement. This is what this is what I have always called the invocation, he says. That invocation which one could formulate like this: You who alone possess the secret of what I am and what I am capable of becoming. And so Marcel speaks about a memory of the future. A memory of the future. A memory is something that recalls something in the past, whereas future lies ahead of us. And so hope reminds us of what day after day, moment after moment, struggle after struggle, that the future, even if I can't put my hand on it, will be guaranteed and it will be good, because it would be otherwise a complete deception if our entire being human just comes to nothing without a dimension that goes beyond time and space. We have a memory of the future. We yearn for something beyond ourselves tomorrow. That's what hope gives us. It is hope. It is hope emerges as a response to this lack of completeness. It's outlined as the viaticum of a pilgrim who perceives the purpose of the direction, who is aware of it, but with the constant need to be confirmed, supported on the journey. Marcel further specifies, quote, of course, we cannot say that hope sees what will happen, but it affirms as if it sees. It would seem that it draws its authority from a hidden vision because which it cannot enjoy, but on which it can rely. Hope, on the contrary, aims at reunion, reconciliation, and for this reason he calls it a memory of the future. This memory of the future is therefore the essence of the pilgrim's journey of hope, because it is a profound fact of awareness that manages to give ultimate meaning to each other's personal history. Hope therefore appears as the ability of human beings to go beyond what is immediately present and contingent, and to open themselves to unknown but already somewhat internalized horizons, driven by the search for meaning, authenticity, and fullness. In the phenomenological perspective that Marcel therefore values and applies widely in his writings and reflections, hope is considered a conscious and intentional experience. Marcel analyzes the anthropological approach to the experience of hope according to the way in which it manifests itself in the concrete lives of people. And it is undoubtedly clear that Marcellian hope is inseparable from the experience of love. Hope, because to hope does not mean to achieve fullness only in private and singular terms, but always taking into account the inclusiveness that the other places before me as a relational question.
Spero di, noi vedete, tutta la nostra vita la, diciamo così, caratterizziamo da questi passaggi continui, lo sperare di.
So to believe in the possibility of the end of a beloved person, to surrender to the horror of letting that person go without being able to object, would mean abandoning the loved one to death. So hope is that tension towards the beyond, not only of one's own being, but also towards the beyond of the beloved's being. To love means to hope that the other is not swallowed up forever by death, but that they continue and prolong their being in fullness to the best of their existential possibilities. It is in this direction, then, that it is appropriate here to recall Marcel's famous distinction between hope of and hope in, where again the enlightening reflection by Father Colombieri supports us. Colombieri says, and I quote, "The specific hopes we might qualify as relative. Hope, on the other hand, for the characters we have indicated, can be called fundamental. It always turns out to be a victory over despair. There can be hope only when the temptation to despair intervenes. Hope is the act by which this temptation is actively overcome. The hope of, in short, this takes place within what is the daily horizon of partial goals. Each individual marks their day in the light of the desire to achieve what they consider necessary. I hope to have a nice celebration. I hope to pass an exam. I hope to be able to sleep, etc. This horizon then works time during our life. However, it does not stop at the hope of, but invokes hope in, and hope in as the function of which all hopes of find their final raison d'etre. This significant point of arrival goes beyond life itself. I hope in a word, life eternal. It would indeed be desirable of all partial hopes, hope of, could be realized in a single lifetime. But if they did not, then having a meaning and an outlet towards the hope founded on Christ that ensures they are fulfilled with the meaning of transcendence, those partial hopes would lose their strength and meaning. The relationship between despair and hope, then, undoubtedly appears to be founded and connected, because hope toward its ultimate foundation, towards its ultimate destination. However, this does not seem to be an automatic or obvious fact. According to Marcel, hope is a response to everything that our heart connects and yearns for. Our heart yearns for eternity. We would be disappointed even if we had a perfectly happy, successful life. We'd be disappointed if our life ended with death. And so we can see love and hope as another passage. They go together. Marcel says this, and it's lovely. To love means to tell someone, you for me will never die. Well, what does he mean? When we all know my father died in my arms, my mother is gone, my sister is dead. I wasn't able to keep them here. I couldn't maintain her. True. However, hope in a beyond, hope in life beyond the tomb means we don't abandon our loved ones to death. So, anybody who's had a powerful grief experience knows perfectly that death is a deep wound that strips your heart open. Maybe the death of somebody else is a worse wound than our own death. Because to lose the one you love to the throes and agony of death can risk making us lose our hope. But no, this is where hope in takes us beyond hope of. Marcel speaks to us of the presence by absence. The lover, the beloved, who is not there physical, but they become present by their absence. It is abandoning the loved one to their logical maturation, if we want. They need to go through death to come into the fullness of life. It's important and necessary that death happens for fullness of life to start. And so we hope in that afterlife. If we just the hope of being together forever, we never let the loved one go. But love that hopes in a life, an encounter, a being together after the life that is fuller than what we knew on earth, contingent as it is, that's where hope allows us to go beyond the pain of death to a real joy in the hope of being together again.
L'altro grande sigillo, dinamismo marcelliano della speranza. D'altra parte ce lo insegna
And so
così bene anche Don Bosco.
this movement for Don Bosco is very strong. In his letter from Rome, Don Bosco combines hope and love so together. Wherever I am, I think always of you. But I desire one thing for you only, he says, that I want you happy in time and in eternity. He's hoping in that. Don Bosco is a hopeful man. This is the hope of Don Bosco for his boys. Happiness of being, hope of being happy in time and in eternity. Hopes in the beyond. And so let's go towards a conclusion here, reflecting on Don Bosco as a witness of hope. And indeed, he is. St. John Bosco exercised hope, he testified to it, and he spread it. In this year's Strenna, the Rector Major wanted to combine the Jubilee theme of pilgrimage with this memory of Don Bosco, who 150 years ago founded the first overseas missions in Argentina, sending young and willing Salesians without particular certainties and guarantees at the level of concrete means, but strong in hope. And he sent them to build Don Bosco's dream in a new continent. Those who set out into the unknown, but with the strength of hope, were not disappointed. They didn't know the fear of loss. They hoped and they went. Hope is, in fact, as we have tried to highlight, an act of trusting awareness that the future holds something alive and certain, because grafted onto hope, we are grafted onto Christ himself, who is hope. Don Bosco was a man of hopes against all logic and all human limits. He entrusted himself, trusting and entrusting all of his works to Mary, help of Christians, the mother who never abandons her children, who anticipates them in their difficulties and needs. Don Bosco hoped with the young, he hoped with the young, and he hoped for the young under the mantle of Mary, help of Christians. He did not reason according to a pedestrian and earthly logic, but according to the dream of prophecy, of the vision that corroborated and directed his work from the beginning. Today, in a world that seems to offer little to our young people, there is a need for a breath of well-founded hope. of orientation towards the future that leads to home. In Don Bosco's memoirs, Memories for the Future, writes Braido about these memoirs, there is an anecdote about a little bricklayer who was pulling a loaded cart, and it was loaded with heavy rocks, way too heavy for this little boy to pull it forward. No longer able to cope, the boy started crying in a turn street, and it was at that moment that Don Bosco noticed him and took action. He left those he was with and began to push the cart himself. And in this way, he restored new hope and confidence and comfort in that poor boy who was crushed by physical and metaphysical weights that were too heavy for him. This simple scene is so powerful. It's so dramatic. It shows us the figure of hope that Don Bosco was in very practical terms, enthusiastically, zealously, with regard to every poor person of his time, especially the young. Our age is full of poverty, need on so many levels. Poverty often leads to despair. There is no lack of opportunities for us to be witnesses of hope. Today's poor, like Don Bosco's poor, include not only those who lack material possessions, but also those who lack knowledge and identity. In this complex and risky context, so much despair, so much disorientation is still rooted in history today. Don Bosco's example was that of a saint who lived not just in the present moment, but also, yes, in the present moment, but with a clear sense of the future, investing all his energy to ensure dignity for his young friends through education in virtues, and always working on developing an awareness of the importance of freedom and recognition of their dignity. Honest citizens and good Christians, happy in time and in eternity. His experience in the prisons, which lasted 30 years for him, is emblematic in this regard, because it directed Don Bosco towards an increasingly clear choice of life, which we know well today, because we have seen and savored its fruits. The first decade of the oratory was a golden age, as Don Bosco called it, filled with signs so extraordinary that they could only be narrated by the witnesses of his time. Yet even Don Bosco experienced betrayal, abandonment, disappointment, disloyalty. However, he remained faithful to his project, to his journey, because when the destination is certain, even if bits and pieces along the way appear broken, the road always leads home. And so, to this end, there is an urgent need for recklessness, as Don Bosco would call it, with purpose, which presupposes flexibility, faith in the presence of God within the time that is history, a reckless abandon to God's will. It demands love because love is courageous, it dares, it starts out again. The harbinger of the future resides within us, as he foresaw its arrival and nurtured its internal dynamics. Through open planning, rekindled hope, and the boldness of a bold heart, of both the boldness of both heart and diligent hands. In this way, the Don Bosco legacy is reactualized in the light of today's challenges, and it seems more necessary and urgent than ever to refer to the ancient but ever new. A trinomial because it's always applicable in the light of the present. There is a need for hope based on the prophecy of facts, a hope that restores meaning to all that is the world of human beings who are well known, who we know well are the only things that ask the ultimate questions, the radical ones that need to be answered in the light of so many emergencies, absurdities, ever rooted evil, which to a superficial eye might appear as the final reckoning, as the point of no return in history. And yet, a great 20th century philosopher, Paul Ricoeur, tells us that The Christian is the adversary of the absurd. The Christian is the prophet of meaning. In this course of rediscovering the hope that does not disappoint, Don Bosco, St. John Bosco, is more than ever our guide and inspiration to give meaning and direction to our journey with the same courage of heart, with the same tenderness of actions, with the same tenacity in witnessing hope, not as some vain theatrical scene, but as a possibility to build day by day along time's path and in each of our histories. Thank you for your attention.
con la stessa tenacia, resistenza nel testimoniare la speranza non come un'utopia, una chimera, un inganno, ma una realtà possibile e da costruire giorno dopo giorno nei sentieri del tempo e della storia di ciascuno. E grazie davvero per la vostra pazienza.
Thank you for your attention.
Ok, grazie Udo per questo.
Grazie Cristiana.
Thank you, Cristiana, for this rich conference you have given us.
Ci hai regalato parecchie cose sulla speranza. Possiamo dire alcune cose come sintesi.
And so, let me see if I can, in some way, summarize some of the highlights of what you shared. First of all, hope is the indispensable link, the connection we need to continue our journey in life. You told us that there are some elemental aspects of hope. Number one, knowing that journeying with hope is not easy. It's challenging. There's fatigue. Journeying in faith calls us to encounter with the other and towards the other. Faith requires that we have a clear destination of where we want to go. The journey in good company with others is a gift, but it's demanding. Not everything is here and now. You helped us reflect on the difference between optimism and hope. There is a small and a large value which distinguishes optimism from hope. And the difference turns on transcendence. Optimism has no link to the transcendent, to what is beyond us, whereas hope precisely never disappoints because it opens our limitedness to the transcendent, to the fullness that we don't possess in our contingent human experience. We carry in ourselves the capacity to go beyond who we are, to look, to focus, to trust in the transcendent. You shared with us the thoughts of Gabriel Marcel, who offers the distinction between hoping for and hoping in. Father Stefano emphasized this yesterday in his comments. Hoping in, which is more than hoping for. Hope in Jesus Christ, not hoping for a sunny day. You opened a discussion around death, to see death not as the end of the road, but as the necessary passage to the fulfillment of what we hope for. Especially when we think about a loved one who passes, we can have a sense of this, the truth of this comment. The one I loved may have died, but they live on in me And my hope is in that ongoing presence, even in their physical absence, hoping for my time to enter that next realm. And so thank you. Finally, I say this. Hope is a memory for the future. This definition is really enchanting because my memory, which looks to the back, an experience of God in my lifetime, which allows me to see the future on which I ground my hope.
Accanto a me c'è il mio fratello e la mia sorella che mi spingono ad andare avanti, una memoria e un futuro che anch'io.
So each of us, as we yearn for eternity, remember that, and so our memories for the future. And now, my comments turn to you who are in the audience. We invite you to offer your own little summary of what we have heard. How can we take this home? How can we write down a few lines, each of us, to speak with the person beside me, beside you? What did you hear? What do you take away? What do you take with you from this rich presentation? After these few minutes of sharing, you will have a moment then to ask questions to Christina. And so time is of the essence. We move then to the sharing phase. 5 minutes to share. So, if you have any questions, we can move into this part of the program.
Ci sono qua le postulanti che possono raccogliere le domande per fare a Cristiana.
So I would ask the postulants kindly to gather whatever questions there might be and bring them up so we can begin our Q&A with Cristiana.
Coraggio, coraggio.
Questo parla speranza, spiritualità salesiana, quindi anche qua recupero pedagogico, io questo qua le vedrei
Ok, ci siamo? Adesso leggeremo già le prime 3 domande che sono arrivate qua.
Thank you. So we'll proceed with the first 3 questions, and we will ask them now of Cristiana. We'll read the 3 questions together. So the first question is a reflection on our Salesian response to hope, how to witness to it. How do we communicate to the young the reality of hope? And linked to that is, isn't there perhaps the truth that we don't speak enough about hope? We don't speak about eternity. We don't talk about heaven, to which the virtue of hope points to. Because we know that before the reality of death, there's a lot of anxiety. And so how do we enter the journey of hope, especially with young people, in a concrete way? Another question, similar to the first, concretely.
Scusate, non sento. Ecco, un po' più vicino al microfono.
Ok, meglio.
Grazie, sì.
Dicevo, uniamo 2 domande che sembrano molto simili.
Putting together 2 similar questions.
Una piccola formula che va dritta al cuore, mi viene da dire. Come trasmettere
How do we transmit hope to the young?
Penso che nasce anche un po' dall'esigenza di riconoscere i salesiani come
And I think we're thinking about that as a reflection on the Salesian family as a type of multinational operation. How do we transmit hope to the young?
Posso rispondere oppure preferite ancora raccogliere qualche altra domanda e poi facciamo un giro?
Shall I go ahead and respond, or do you want to ask me some more questions? Let me know. Go ahead, please, and start as we organize the rich harvest of questions that has just arrived. And so the first and second questions are centered really on our Salesian hearts, focused on young people who are reflecting on life, on its radical meaning. Young people, they're still fresh, and so they have a few years of experience, and so their minds and hearts are still fresh. So how do we communicate to them the idea of hope here and hope in this world, that opens onto hope for an eternal life. And so I think young people are more open to hope than a lot of adults are, who can become a little more jaded or fixed in their way of thinking because adults have had to deal with disappointments, maybe haven't done so very successfully. And so speaking to young people of hope, well, is kind of easy because they are fresher, and young people are open to hope. This doesn't mean young people are necessarily spared of pain and suffering. To the contrary, we know that they have their own share of grief. And so, at the level of the structure of a young person, a young person in their way of being has already had to deal with life. Now, I'm not talking about every young person, but their life is yet to be lived. They have a future. And so this renders them particularly fertile for a conversation, open to they're well disposed, they're full of energy to think about the future, to make their journey, which freshness and energy maybe somebody tried by life may have lost. So to reach young people doesn't mean talking too much about theories. To get to the heart of the young person, and this is Don Bosco's genius, you got to be a witnesses. And so we have to live with them. We have to listen to them. We have to constantly be there, even when it's a drain, physical fatigue, or just even the energy drain of being with them. I hear so many young people in the university where I work who need to be listened to be welcomed. And I believe the first great potential good that we can bring to the young is on the question of hope is rekindle their trust in someone. This is a time in which young people either trust too much in a kind of automaton way on their social media, like a bit of a robotic way, or we don't trust at all. We are skeptical and cynical of others. And so we as Salesians have to render ourselves available to welcome the young in the most ordinary, everyday way, being a continuous presence among them, to be available to listen to them. They so need this, so need this. We tend to try to indoctrinate them vertically from the top down, but what they need is to be encountered in their ground level and draw them in. So, in my professional responsibilities with my students, what I try to do is to be available to them in some way, even though there is a differential in responsibilities, to be one among them. Find the way to take care of them, to help them reflect on the diversity among them. Our world doesn't need long speeches. They need facts. They need witnesses, and not vague concepts. To be a leader, to be a maestro, a teacher doesn't mean being an expert. A sincere witness. No paternalism, no maternalism, no. Don't treat the kids like little. Don't treat the young people like little kids. They know they're adults. They don't need anything syrupy sweet. They need role models, parental figures. They understand the truth. They intuit the integrity of the adult's response, if we're sincere or not. And so, to help young people open up to hope, we need to witness it to them. They have to see it. They have to see the hope that moves us, and that will light the fire of hope in them. Witnesses are convincing. And so credibility, which we earn by being close to them, by being spontaneously companions with them on the journey. The young person is not something or someone to be filled, but someone to call forth, to let them become who they are. And so the more we get close to them so they feel safe enough to speak to us, the more we listen to them, the better things will go. And that's where we're very much lacking. But when a young person recognizes in an adult a welcome listening ear, then they jump right in. And then in that exchange, the gift of hope will take root because they've experienced that there is someone in whom they can place their trust. And so I draw these reflections from my experience as a mother and as a teacher and as a Salesian. The next question has to do with the relationship between hope among people who are not people of faith. And so if hope is a constitutive element of our humanity, we're all capable of it. Well, what does an atheist anchor his or her hope in? And so this is a philosophical question. And atheistic philosophers have reflected and written on this. And so, precisely for the reasons we gave, we can reaffirm that hope is a dynamic that every human being is capable of as we reflect on the ultimate thing that drives us, draws us, gives us value, gives us meaning. The problem is this: without hope, human life would be an absurd journey. And atheist writers will say this too: an absurd life without hope, because hope is natural to us. We all hope, believing in God or not. We all hope. However, the foundation of that hope in versus hope for, we can only choose for ourselves. We can place our hope in ourselves, and so it's a closed circuit. So a true atheist a real atheist is never at peace, because by definition, the atheist is invested in the disturbing search of what does not exist. This is a dramatic thing. So to put ourselves in the position of hope means having the disposition that, yes, is ours because we're human, giving the ultimate answer, finding in hope the definitive answer we need, requires even of the atheist to determine the end game for them. What is the end of the line? Each of us, every human being, in whatever reality of faith or no faith, every human being doesn't want to die. Nobody wants to die. And so we all want to go beyond our limits. Our hearts are restless unless they rest in God, says Saint Augustine. So Saint Augustine gives us the foundation of our faith, but if we are unsettled, at least we remain open to this search, because the vigilance, hoping means staying vigilant, for what is to come. We live in an age we're kind of drugged out as a culture. Our critical sense is a little bit superficial. We trust on, oh, well, people say, everybody's saying, it's what everybody's doing. This is a deadly threat to hope, because the ultimate things beyond death are not superficial. We have to search and wrestle to find them if we're going to base on our lives on something. And so even the atheist can hope. The problem is that the atheist, if he's a true atheist, has a desire for the fullness of existence, but doesn't know where to find it. What renders the atheist concretely, the problem for the atheist is that hope in something beyond me doesn't open up for an atheist, because there's nothing beyond me. And so it's a frustrated experience of hope. Many times speaking with young people, and they ask these questions, young people can slip into a type of atheism. But it comes down to accompaniment, comes to education. We are in our, okay, yes, hope is part of our human reality, but like all of our human possibilities that make us up, if we don't exercise them, they don't develop. They lie dormant. It's like a gift we never knew we reserved. It's like having a Ferrari, but you never turn the engine, you keep it in the garage. And so we can have the gift and never use it. Become passive and undeveloped in those human qualities. That's what we have to develop. Thank you. Okay, we'd love to speak.
Mi sente? Ok. Purtroppo dico, abbiamo pochissimo tempo, staremmo ore a sentire.
We would be delighted to listen more to what you have to say, but the program is requiring us to go forward, but I will give you a couple more questions before we move on.
Sono anche due che provocano in un certo senso. La prima riguarda una dimensione quasi temporale, no? Molto spesso ci
Very often we hear that the time of Christianity is the now, and the apostolate, we share the faith, we work together, whereas the time of hope focuses us on the future. What's the relationship between those two? Another question, a social dimension of hope as a social phenomenon. Question. I'm trying to be a person of hope, but I live it in a personal, individual way. I don't really think I live my hope in a relational, social way. So how do I move from my individualistic experience of hope to a more social community one? So great questions. I'll get right to the core. So yes, the time of Christianity is the present, but not presentism. So presentism, blocking ourselves, closing ourselves in the moment, and have no sense of intention or tension towards anything beyond the right now. And so the time of living in the present really means being attentive to the moment, but in the view of what is to come. So, and the more I live in the present in a full way, I'm already intention towards the future. The present doesn't exclude the memory of the past, and it doesn't exclude the tension towards something that I have not seen yet. But it's the moment of now is the foreshadowing of the next one. And so you cannot separate the present moment from the future. It's being present to the now that allows me to launch me into the future. Don Bosco's dreams were the future brought into the present. There is a big difference between what we live as the present and presentism. the little bites. I don't get locked in the immediate little moment that I'm in. That's presentism. But present means being conscious of the now, all that came before, all that will come after. Being present, therefore, to the young people I have in front of us, that is not in the cheap pleasure that one might seek, that one lives in the now, but in developing the capacity to be present to listen to develop the pleasure of sharing stories, lives, journeys, developing a healthy, critical sense of the now. This is what we need to work on. And so the difference between present and presentism, in the present, all of our being is activated. And presentism, there is locking ourselves in the cage of the moment, and I can maybe enjoy the moment for a few seconds, but then I'm trapped in it, and there's no connectivity with what came before, what came after. And so thank you for the questions. I wish I could have been there even in person in Valdocco, but I'm here to take care of my mom. And so anyway, coming to the social question, all of this has to be developed. This is the challenge of being people of hope. I've realized when they called me here and there to talk about hope, everybody is worried about their own stuff, for their situation, for their individual need. But that's not what hope is. The Christian hope experience, if Christianity is to be true to itself, the Christianity given to us and just witnessed by Jesus Christ, means that we take our hope embraces the good of all people. Our hope is, by definition, communitarian. Easter has connected us to each other because we are all sinners, but the dead end of sin has been removed through the resurrection. Our hope is in the fullness of life that comes to us through Jesus. Responsible for listening to what others are hopeful for, but especially young people who, like whatever companion on the journey that we have, who doesn't know, it needs a very little bit to offer hope. Could be a smile, a listen, being someone who looks at another person eye to eye, acknowledging their humanity, recognizing someone gives hope. You considered me as your equal, walking together. And that's how we build hope, and we share it at a social level. It's the listening that misses. We have a culture of blah, blah, blah. Everybody wants to talk. We have talking heads. We have bloggers. We have influencers online, but nobody wants to listen. Thank you. Thank you very much for your rich intervention. Nice round of applause. She's warmed our heart with these thoughts.
E personalmente restituisco una prospettiva che nessuno dei seduti può vedere, ma dalle cabine c'erano i traduttori che gesticolavano proprio per la velocità e la passione che ci ha messo nel rispondere. Quindi da qui è stato, io li ringrazierei, stanno salutando, ne approfitto perché lo sforzo è grandissimo, è davvero, mi faceva sorridere come la stessa passione che lei ha trasmesso è stata trasmessa dai traduttori, quindi grazie.
Che non riuscivano a seguirti. Presentismo e presenza. Per i salesiani e anche per noi questo è il sacramento della presenza, no? Ci è stato consegnato nei nostri capitoli e anche tu adesso ce lo consegni per vivere la speranza oggi, no? Con questo cuore presenti, guardati, ascoltati, amati tra di noi. Allora,
So, thank you once again. The next year, I hope I'll be able to join you in Valdocco.
Segnatelo nel calendario.
Vi abbraccio tutti e grazie di cuore.
Grazie mille.
Bene carissimi, andiamo adesso, procediamo, continuiamo. Sì. Quindi ora
Il momento più atteso della mattinata, dai, possiamo dirlo.
Okay, so now we come to the highlight of the morning's program, break time, 11 o'clock break. But before we go to break, a couple announcements. First of all, after the break, we go into our small group work. To figure out what group you're in, look at your name tag. So if you haven't registered yet, go during the break to reception, get your bag. When you have your badge, look at it. There is a little ball where you eat, the color of where you take your meals. You've been there already last night. Beside it, there's another little circle with the groups, the work groups. So, for example, ITA 10, or English 1. From here, we don't come back here. After the break, you go to the individual rooms in your small group. So go to page 15 of your booklet, and you will find there, so English 1, you have to go to the mission office. English 2, Mama Margherita, and so Procura Missioni, that is the mission office. Go to reception. Reception is on the left of the basilica. The mission office is on. The mission office is above reception. Okay? Mama Margaret is the little house across the road from the basilica on the left.
Apposta per sbagliare. Allora, ITA 2 e 3 insieme.
Gruppo ITA 2, ITA 3.
Ok.
Coraggio.
Sala Riccaldone. Giusto. Giù voi, poi ITA 4 in sala Rua andrete.
ITA 4. Ok.
Vi riconoscete. Poi abbiamo 5 e 6 sala Don Bosco. Facile.
Okay, so they're working through all the Italian groups. There are 12 of them. There are 4 English groups. English 1 goes to Procura Missioni, the mission office, above reception. You can access that either from reception, I think, or from the courtyard. English 2, 3, and 4, you have to go to Mamma Margherita, which is across the road from the basilica. If the basilica is behind you, you look left. And the building to the left, across the road, is Mamma Margherita.
Poi abbiamo il gruppo francese, quindi avete FRN, sala Ricceri,
Gruppo
francese. Sì, vi guardate così poi più o meno. Questa però è lesbica, mi ha detto Ricceri, attenzione. Allora, basta.
Io parlo spagnolo.
Hai ragione. E infatti abbiamo il gruppo spagnolo, S1 e 2 in sala colazione.
Gruppo spagnolo.
Spagnolo 1 e 2.
Donde hacemos el desayuno.
Ecco. E poi abbiamo il portoghese, PRT, in sala comunità, che è al primo piano, portoghese. E poi abbiamo l'inglese 1, quindi Eng 1, nella procura missioni che era
nella zona della segreteria. C'è una porta che dal cortile va verso la segreteria.
So yeah, you can enter English 1, Procura Missioni, from the courtyard. By the reception, you go up. For those of you in Mamma Margherita, English 2, 3, and 4, as I said, with the basilica behind you, you turn left on the corner. Okay, so 2, 3, and 4, you're in the same building, but in 2 different rooms. Last announcement for today. The doors of the theater will be locked. Therefore, take everything you need with you. coats, papers, everything you need. We will be back here only tomorrow morning. Only tomorrow morning.
Quindi ora appuntamento alle 11:30 per i lavori di gruppo. Un attimo solo ancora.
Non abbiamo finito. Adesso lo ripetiamo. Per favore attendete.
And so one more announcement. Okay, please sit down. We're not finished yet.
Spero di. Allora, c'è un chiarimento.
One clarification for the Spanish group. Okay, it doesn't concern the English folks, so I'm not going to bother.
Sì, lì ci saranno alcune che saranno vicino alle scale che spiegheranno. È nella sala del piano 1. Lo hablo en español, tienen toda la razón. A ver, para los del grupo español, nos encontramos aquí en el corredor, porque en la sala que se dice ahí es en el primer piso, donde es el comedor de los salesianos.
Un momento solo, aspettiamo che ci danno indicazioni sul lavoro da svolgere poi in gruppo. Ci spiegano.
Okay. Los españoles, por favor, a la hora del grupo, buscan a don Juan Luis, que es él el que les va a decir más claro y más rápido.
Nei gruppi cosa faremo, Leslie?
Allora, nei gruppi avete le domande.
And so in the group, first, what do? You will get, if you go to page 16 of your program booklet, page 16, there are questions. So I'll pick someone who will kind of coordinate the work and a secretary to take notes. Write your responses down in English on a piece of paper. Hand in to one of the panel group there 3 thoughts that came out of your discussion. On page 16 of your booklet, the questions are there. Don't make long speeches, because no one's going to read them. Short, to the point, say what you got to say. That way we can form a nice mosaic of our thoughts and form a collaborative synthesis. After you've done all of this reflection, you can choose one person which for you was essential, the most important thing to include in our message that we will write as Salesian pilgrims. And so we remind you that at the very beginning, we sent to you sandals, the decision to work, a stick as the support for the journey, the Bible as a symbol of the inspiration, a bottle of water for our baptism, bread and wine for the Eucharist, soap, purification, sacrament of confession, the rings, all these different things were symbols of our journey, of our pilgrimage. One of them, pick one of these symbols that for your group is the most important of them all, which we should take on our personal journey throughout this Jubilee year. Okay, so thank you. Have a good little break and then get to your group work, and we'll see you in the afternoon.